For a long time, I misunderstood what money was supposed to do for a person. I thought money was mainly an object of pursuit. You chased it, you earned it, you held it, you feared losing it, you compared your amount to someone else's amount. You judged yourself by how much of it had gathered around your name. That is how most people think about money. And because that is how most people think about money, most people remain tense around it for most of their lives. They want more money, but they are afraid of what having money says about them. They want security, but they still carry the nervous system of scarcity. They want abundance, but all of their behaviors are shaped by fear, shame, urgency, or a story they inherited before they were old enough to examine it. That is why I would begin here, not with a trick, not with a side hustle, not with a shortcut, not with some loud internet fantasy about making money in a weekend. I would begin with the truth that makes people uncomfortable. The way you feel about money will shape what money is allowed to become in your life. That is not mystical, it is practical. A person who feels guilty around money will behave differently from one who feels worthy of stewarding it. A person who thinks rich people are bad will sabotage opportunities that might make them richer. A person who believes money always leaves will clutch it even when generosity would expand their life. A person who feels helpless when broke will look for rescue. A person who learns to become helpful when broke will start creating value. That difference matters. In fact, it can change an entire life. If I were speaking as plainly as I know how, I would say this: a great many people do not have a money problem first. They have a money story problem. And until that story is named, challenged, and replaced, the behaviors stay loyal to the old script no matter how many tactics. I have seen this again and again. A person says, "I want to make more money." Fine, but underneath that sentence, there is often another one. People with money are selfish. Good people do not care about wealth. If I get rich, I will become bad. Making money is hard. Money brings stress. Money leaves. Money is not for people like me. I am always a little beneath everyone else. There is never enough. If I spend, I am unsafe. If I earn, I may become someone I do not respect. These are not harmless private thoughts. These are instructions. And if you keep repeating those instructions internally, your behavior will obey them far more faithfully than it obeys your goals. This is why awareness matters so much. When people talk about money, they usually jump directly to tactics. Cut this, invest here, pay that off, open this account, start this business, learn this skill. I have no objection to tactics. Tactics matter, but tactics without awareness often become another form of avoidance. You can memorize the right steps and still not follow them if the deeper story remains untouched. That is why the first step is not action. The first step is awareness. How do you actually feel when money comes to you? How do you feel when money leaves? How do you feel when you open your bank account? How do you feel when someone richer than you enters the room? How do you feel when you imagine yourself becoming wealthy? Those questions reveal more than people think. Most people do not want to ask them because the answers are embarrassing. Tight chest, shallow breathing, urgency, avoidance, shame, jealousy, resentment, fear, guilt, scarcity. None of those feelings make you a bad person, but if you do not notice them, they begin to run the financial side of your life from behind the curtain. I think of it this way. Money is one of the easiest places for old emotional material to hide in modern adult life. The arguments your parents had, the tension in the house, the words about what things cost, the shame around asking for help, the humiliation of feeling left out, the belief that other kids had more, the fear of becoming greedy, the confusion about debt, the silence around financial strategy, the panic in the room when a bill arrived, the divorce that money helped ignite, the message that rich people must have cheated, the message that wanting more is disloyal, the message that being a good person means settling for less. All of this matters. People hear that and think it sounds soft. It is not soft. It is structural. because beliefs dictate behaviors, and behaviors repeated under stress become financial reality. If you believe money makes people bad, you will hesitate to ask for more. You will isolate instead of connecting. If you believe your lack is proof of virtue, you will stay broke while calling it character. If you believe you are always behind, you will behave from panic rather than from design. If you believe more money will only bring more problems, then every increase will feel like a threat instead of a tool. These are expensive beliefs, and most people never notice them. I noticed something similar, and when I was young, I did not grow up with great wealth around me. I knew what it felt like to look around and assume that other people were doing a little better. I knew what it felt like to think that money belonged more naturally to other families, other neighborhoods, other kinds of people. I knew what it meant to feel just slightly beneath the life everyone else seemed to enter so casually. That feeling can become dangerous, because when you feel beneath, then even when money does come to you, you do not know what to do with it. You feel excited, then anxious. You feel proud, then guilty. You feel relieved, then afraid it will vanish. You do not know whether to spend it, hold it, hide it, or worship it. This is what happens when a person learns how to receive money before they learn how to relate to money. The relationship matters first. A lot of people are trying to earn their way out of a story they have not yet healed. That almost never works cleanly. Now let me say something else that makes people uncomfortable. If you are broke, scared, or financially stuck, one of the worst things you can do is become more helpless. Helplessness is seductive because it feels honest. I do not know what to do. I have nothing to offer. I need someone to save me. I am too far behind. I do not have the right skills. I do not have a degree. I do not have resources. I do not have a network. I am on the couch. I am in debt. I am 4 months from disaster. These thoughts may feel true, but helplessness is rarely where abundance begins. Helpfulness is. This is one of the biggest money shifts I have ever seen. The person who goes from helplessness to helpfulness starts creating energy that money can actually gather around. What do I mean by that? When you are broke, the instinct is to ask, who can give me something? That is natural. That is human. I do not condemn it. But often the better question is, what can I give even now? Not because giving is magical in some childish sense, because giving reorganizes your identity. It turns you from a passive sufferer into an active participant. It reconnects you to value. It restores dignity. It creates momentum. It makes you visible. It often introduces you to rooms, conversations, and opportunities that fear alone would never have found. This is why I have such respect for generosity, especially in lean seasons. Not only money generosity, time generosity, attention generosity, curiosity generosity, energy generosity, service generosity. You may have no capital, but you still have energy. You still have interest. You still have questions. You still have effort. You still have the ability to notice what another person might need. That is often the first form of currency you actually control. I have watched people with no apparent advantages change their entire trajectory because they brought unusual energy, curiosity, care, and service to a room. A hostess with real warmth and command can attract opportunities. A young person with no money but with attention and service can enter a relationship with someone who knows more. A person willing to help before they are paid can demonstrate ability before they have credentials. A person willing to bring life into a conversation can become more valuable than someone with a much stronger arfe sum fe and no human energy. This is something very few people understand when they are broke. They think because they do not yet have money, they do not yet have anything. That is false. You may not have financial, but you still have social capital, emotional capital, energetic capital, reputational capital, and the ability to create trust. Those things matter, and yes, they matter financially. Not because you should fake them, because they are part of value creation. The waitress who introduces herself warmly, makes a thoughtful recommendation, and creates a better experience earns more. The person who notices what someone needs and helps without being asked builds a stronger reputation. The young worker who brings curiosity and follow-through into a mentor relationship gets remembered. The person who contributes before they demand becomes easier to trust. That is not manipulation. It is alignment. Money tends to follow value, and value often begins as helpfulness long before it becomes cash. This is why I do not believe abundance begins only when your bank account changes. Abundance begins when your internal relationship to value changes. A broke person who thinks, "I have nothing," behaves one way. A broke person who thinks, "I can still bring energy, skill, generosity, and usefulness to the world," behaves another. The second person is already moving, and movement matters. Now, there is another point that must be made here, because many people romanticize quick money when they are desperate. That is a mistake. There is a difference between making money easy and making money quick. Most people want money quick. That desire is understandable. Debt is real, rent is real, bills are real, humiliation is real. But when people become obsessed with quick money, they often lose respect for process. They want the shortcut, the hack, the tenfold return, the thing no one else saw, the coin, the deal, the miracle. I have watched this impulse destroy far more people than it saved, because quick money appeals most strongly to the person whose nervous system is already panicked. And panic is a terrible capital allocator. Easy money, properly understood, is different. Easy money does not mean effortless fantasy. It means money earned with increasing alignment, skill, clarity, and confidence. It means the process becomes less friction, filled because you become more capable and more congruent. It means your earning stops feeling like punishment, because your value creation becomes more legible and more repeatable. That is entirely different from gambling on a miracle. The world is full of stories about people who made an extraordinary amount very fast. What people forget is that for each one of those stories, there are countless quieter stories about people who built a capability stack so strong that money eventually began to come with more ease. That is the path I trust. And if you have $1,000 or $5,000 and you do not know what to do with it, I would often tell you something that disappoints the impatient mind. Bet on you first, not recklessly, not narcissistically, not by buying random inspiration, but by increasing courage, skill, and confidence in a real domain. Public speaking, writing, sales, editing, consulting, coding, design, negotiation. Something the world pays for. People underestimate this because self-investment does not always look glamorous in the beginning. A class, a coach, a tool, a stretch of time spent learning, a season spent doing work you do not intend to do forever in order to create the runway for the work you actually want later. That matters enormously. Too many people confuse seasons with destiny. They say, "This is not what I want to do forever, so it is beneath me." That is foolish. A season can fund a future. A transitional skill can create freedom. A temporary job can finance an enduring dream. A year of work you do not worship can become the bridge to the work you eventually love. This is one of the places where ego ruins people. They want to be paid immediately for their perfect calling. Often life does not work that way. Often life says, use what you have now, serve where you can now, learn what you can now, and use this season to build the next one. That is not failure. That is strategy. I have far more respect for the person who honestly uses a temporary skill to create runway than for the dreamer who waits for ideal conditions while growing bitter. Runway matters, and runway is often what generosity, service, and self-investment create first. Now let me say something about gratitude. Gratitude is not a trick to pretend your problems are not real. It is not spiritual theater. It is not smiling through unpaid bills and calling that wisdom. Real gratitude is orientation. It is the decision not to let scarcity become the only language you speak. It is the decision to notice that even in lean seasons you still possess some resources that fear tells you to ignore. You still have time, you still have body language, you still have curiosity, you still have standards, you still have the power to say thank you, you still have the power to be respectful. You still have the power to steward what arrives instead of resenting what is absent. That matters more than people think. A person who treats all incoming money with fear behaves differently from one who treats it with attention. A person who resents every outgoing payment behaves differently from one who says, "I do not like this, but I am still choosing to face it." A person who feels contaminated by wealth behaves differently from one who sees money as a tool. Again, this is not abstract. It shows up in behavior. Do you look at your accounts or avoid them? Do you send the invoice or delay it? Do you ask for fair compensation or shrink? Do you say thank you when money arrives, or do you treat it as if it will betray you? Do you spend from panic? Do you hoard from panic? Do you give thoughtfully? Do you refuse to give because you are terrified of emptiness? All of these patterns reveal the story, and stories can be rewritten, not overnight, but rewritten nonetheless. Here is another truth people need. Having more money does not automatically heal your relationship with money. In fact, if your story remains unhealed, more money can become a bigger prison. I have known people who were broke and tense, then they became rich and remained tense. They simply had better furniture in the prison. They still felt unsafe spending. They still felt guilty earning. They still felt suspicious when others asked for something. They still hoarded. They still panicked. They still measured themselves against others. They still had no internal freedom. So let no one tell you that net worth alone is the same as peace. It is not. High net worth does not automatically mean abundance. It does not automatically mean freedom. It does not automatically mean self-worth. It does not automatically mean secure relationships. It does not automatically mean emotional ease. A rich cage is still a cage. This is why the work must happen before and during financial growth, not after you heal as you build. You become aware as you earn. You learn to receive as you create. You learn to spend with integrity as you expand. You learn to give with calm. You learn to keep money from becoming either your master or your villain. That is what mature wealth looks like to me. Not enormous numbers alone. A nervous system that can hold them without turning strange. Now let me tell you where I think most people miss the deepest point. They think the goal is money. The goal is a rich life. A rich life may include money. In most modern societies, it certainly helps. But money without richness inside the person is not abundance. It is merely potential, sometimes trapped inside fear. A rich life is one where you feel free enough to give, free enough to receive, free enough to rest, free enough to build, free enough to be generous, free enough to make choices without making those choices. That is what people are actually after when they say they want more money. They want room. They want ease. They want dignity. They want the ability to care for themselves and others without constant panic. They want not to feel beneath. They want not to feel trapped. They want not to feel like one bill could collapse the whole story. All of that is understandable. But the person who chases only the external number while neglecting the internal relationship often discovers too late that the inner poverty remained. So I would rather tell the truth. Build both. Build skill, build confidence, build courage, build generosity, build awareness, build better beliefs, build a richer internal life, build value, build runway, build income, build savings, build investing, build systems. Let each part strengthen the others, because then your external growth no longer rests on a damaged internal story. It rests on alignment. That is far more durable. Now, if I were starting from scarcity today, and I wanted to rewrite everything, I would begin in a very practical order. I would watch my nervous system around money. I would notice what happens in my body when money comes and goes. I would notice if I avoid accounts, fear bills, resent spending, or tense up around earning. Second, I would write the money story. What did I learn? What did I hear? What did I believe about rich people? What did I believe about myself? Where did I feel beneath? Where did I feel ashamed? Where did I feel guilty? Where did I feel unsafe? Third, I would begin interrupting helplessness by choosing helpfulness. Who can I serve? What can I offer? Where can I bring energy, skill, care, curiosity, or usefulness? What season am I in? And what can this season fund, even if it is not my forever path? Fourth, I would invest in capability, not random hope capability. The skill that raises confidence, the confidence that raises action, the action that raises value, the value that raises compensation. That sequence is worth more than most quick money fantasies will ever become. Fifth, I would practice gratitude without using it as denial. Thankful for what enters, respectful about what leaves, honest about what is still broken, open to possibility instead of loyal to despair. And sixth, I would refuse to worship quick money. I would choose durable value over flashy outcomes, because flashy outcomes often disappear at the speed they arrived. This is the route I trust, not because it is sexy, because it survives. And life is long. What survives matters more than what merely excites. If I had to say the entire lesson in one sentence, it would be this. The person who heals their money story learns to become helpful instead of helpless, and builds skill with generosity will often end up wealthier than the person who keeps chasing money while secretly believing they do not deserve to hold it. That is the truth as I have seen it, and it is the truth I would want you to build from.